Hey, welcome back to Crimes and Closets. This is Christy in my closet in St. Louis.
And this is Beth in my closet in North Carolina. Happy October.
Yes, September is behind us.
Yes, that was a really crazy month. And now it's my birth month and it's going to be crazier.
Yep.
For different reasons, hopefully.
Well, yeah, for sure, for different reasons. And I mean, we're starting it out with a bang because it's there.
This is a real humdinger of a doozy.
Yeah. And it's, as we answered, this is my quote unquote favorite case, if you can say favorite, as we answered last week on our
Yes. We don't like that word because they're all awful.
Yeah. But this is it. So keep your pants on.
Just give it to me. Just come on.
Okay.
Tell them what they want to hear.
All right. Here we go. Okay. So this case was suggested by our friend on Instagram, Carrie, who I believe is a
Carrie.
North Carolina person.
Yes. She's suggested cases before.
Yes. Probably. She probably suggests a lot of them. But anyway, the interesting part of this story is that Carrie lived in the same apartment complex that the crime occurred in at the time that it occurred. So, yeah. So she was there. And so she suggested this book to read, which is what I read for my entire research, essentially, because it had everything laid out right there. And it was a fantastic book. So we got another book that we can give away to anybody that might want to read it. It's really good.
Fun.
Yes, I couldn't put it down. Once I started actually reading it, I think I read it in 2.5 days. It's awesome. And so I also spoke to Carrie because I thought it would be fun to talk to somebody who was there when the crime happened and get their perspective on it. So at the end of this episode, there'll be a little extra ditty for you to listen to about, Carrie's perspective on when this occurred and how she felt and all that kind of stuff.
How cool is that?
Yes, are so inclined to stick around and listen to it. It's not very long. It's probably about 10-ish minutes, something like that. So stick around for that.
I am definitely inclined. All right.
Good. All right. So this is the Stephanie Bennett story. Stephanie was born on April 30th, 1979, which, might I add, is just almost exactly a year younger than me.
Okay.
She was born to Molly and Carmen Bennett. She grew up in Rocky Mount, Virginia. Because isn't there a Rocky Mount, North Carolina?
There is, yes.
Okay. Well, she was born in Rocky Mount, Virginia.
Okay.
Or grew up there. She was somewhat of a shy child, but as she got to know you, her personality would come out and she would open up. Her parents divorced when she was young, but they always lived pretty close to each other, so she still got to spend quite a bit of time with both her parents, I'm guessing pretty equally. She got Miss Personality for her senior year of high school at Franklin County High School. Remember the superlatives? Do they still do those?
Yes, we just talked about that in another case few months ago.
Yeah, I remember that too. And I think we asked the same question. If anybody knows, let us know.
I think they still do it.
Yeah. I haven't gotten a yearbook in I don't know how long. I have one coming this year from Isaiah. So
yeah, you'll have to let us know.
So she went on to go to college at Roanoke College and graduated in 2001. During her time at Roanoke College, she met a boy at a sorority dance who she hit it off with, but he had come to that dance with someone else, and Stephanie was somewhat concerned with how that girl would feel about him talking to another girl or dancing. So she basically was like, I'm not interested, which was, pretty respectful, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But soon after that, Walter, which is his name, I don't know if I even mentioned that earlier, but his name was Walter. Walter and Stephanie.
Oh, Walter.
Yes. They began dating. And not long after graduation, Stephanie moved to Raleigh, North Carolina for a job with IBM, and Walter moved to Greenville, South Carolina to start his graduate degree in engineering.
Oh, that's kind of far apart.
Yes, so exactly. And they didn't really intend to have this long distance relationship, but they were making it work. And in fact, Walter gave her a promise ring for Christmas in 2001.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes. So Stephanie was living in Raleigh with her friend Emily and her stepsister Deanna. The three of them had moved there together after school. They lived in an apartment complex in Raleigh on Lake Lynn Drive called Bridgeport Apartments, and that's just off Leesville Road if you are familiar with the area, which I'm sure you are.
I do. I know Leesville Road. I don't know where that other road is.
Lakeland Drive.
Yeah.
You know where
there's
Lakeland
a good
is?
pizza place on Leesville Road. It's good.
Oh, really? Oh.
It's like a Brickyard pizza oven, the oven pizzas.
Oh, that sounds yummy. I'll have to try it sometime.
Yes.
If I'm in the area.
I kind of want a pizza now.
So in May of 2002, the three had been planning to go their separate ways. They had lived there for almost a year. Deanna was going to move to Richmond, Virginia, and Emily was going to go back to Roanoke because she decided to change her career path and started to take some classes back at the Roanoke College again. So she's like, I'm going to move back. Deanna was leaving, and Stephanie wanted to move to South Carolina to be with Walter.
Walter, yes.
So that's the plan, and Stephanie's plan is to move in July of 2002. Stephanie had just gone to South Carolina to spend some time with Walter for the weekend of May 17th in 2002. They had been looking for apartments together and planning their future. Stephanie was not looking forward to going back to Raleigh. She was not feeling too safe being at her apartment complex. There had been a few things that had happened lately that made her feel unsafe. There's a lake right there, which is why it's called Lake Lynn, which I kept calling Lynn Lake when I was talking with Carrie, and could not get it out of my head. So anyway, a woman jogging around the lake had been raped while jogging. A car had been stolen.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Mm-hmm. A car had been stolen from the parking lot, and there were reports of a peeping Tom in the area. So,
creepy.
Yeah, that is creepy. The latest report was from the end of April, when he had been spotted outside of Stephanie's window. And so it really freaked her out to be at the apartment right now.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh my, this is ominous, isn't it? Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would really freak me out as well. And their building also backed up to this wooded area. And so when she was coming back from her weekend in South Carolina, Emily and Deanna were not there. Emily had gone back to attend some of the classes, and Deanna was back in Rocky Mount attending a funeral. So she was like, I really don't want to be here. I'm by myself, and all this junk is happening. But I mean, she had to do what she had to do because she had to go back to work.
Right.
So on Monday, she came home from work, and in her usual routine, she spoke to Walter on the phone at 8 p.m. This is Monday the 20th. And I believe that Emily also called her around that time. I think they said like call waiting. She buzzed in during her phone call with Walter. So that she had spoken to Walter and Emily that night. During her conversation with Walter, they had talked about needing to get an application in for an apartment that they were interested in. And so they had made a plan for Walter to fax her that application at work so she could sign it and get it back to him. So They were like, tomorrow morning, I'm going to fax this to you. Just let me know when you're in work and when you're near the fax machine so you can get it right away and whatever. So on Tuesday, May 21st, 2002, Walter waited to hear from Stephanie so he could send the fax. He called her. He emailed her at work around 11, but she didn't get back to him. And he just assumed that, well, she must have gotten busy at work. Like, that's fine. I'll go have lunch and I'll try and get in touch with her later. So he emailed her again later that afternoon and also tried to call her. And again, he got no answer. He called Deanna, and they both agreed that this was very unlike her. She's very reliable, always answered, or got back to you right away. So Deanna started to make some calls and found out that Stephanie had not come into work that day at all, which was even more strange. No. Yeah. So Deanna decided to send a friend over to the apartment to just kind of do like somewhat of a wellness check on their own. They discovered that Stephanie's car was still at the apartment complex, but she was not answering the door. Deanna calls and gives the apartment manager permission to enter the apartment to check on her. And as soon as the manager walks in, they find Stephanie's body in Emily's bedroom on the floor, tied up with a blue pair of underwear in her mouth. And the manager leaves immediately and calls the police because he's like, she's been murdered. Like, there's no other way to describe the scene.
She was dead. Oh.
Yes. When police arrive at 3:33 p.m., they find Stephanie just as the manager had said. She was naked on the floor, tied up with purple marks around her neck and blue underwear in her mouth. They find her wallet and compare a photo on the driver's license to the girl on the floor, and preliminarily, is that a word?
I think it is now. I like it.
They say that it's Stephanie, although, which I didn't know this, it cannot officially be confirmed until the autopsy, but
Right.
it looks like it. Deanna had called her stepfather, because remember, Deanna is Stephanie's stepsister. So she called her stepfather, which was Stephanie's dad, as soon as she knew that someone had been found in the apartment, and Carmen and his wife, Jennifer, got in the car and drove the 4 hours straight to Raleigh.
Oh.
Yeah, so sad. The police start to scour the crime scene. There were some leaves on top of laundry in a basket, and this basket was just under the window in Emily's room. And there was a blanket folded at the foot of her bed, and a few items had been moved, but nothing really looked like it was disheveled. You know, if you didn't know that these items were there, you wouldn't have known that they were moved somewhere else in the room. Emily knew, but we wouldn't have known, or like police wouldn't have known unless Emily said, no, that was over here. So one thing was that a phone had been moved to the closet, and a few other items inside the closet were moved and kind of like out of place. And the same with Stephanie's room. It didn't appear that anything had happened to the room aside from some blankets in a pile on the floor at the foot of the bed. Her pillows were on her bed in the shape of a U, which I guess is apparently how she liked to kind of snuggle up in bed when she went to sleep. So initially the police are thinking that the person came in through the window in Emily's room, which is why there were leaves kind of in her laundry basket just under the window, hid in Emily's closet until Stephanie was sleeping, and then that's when he made his move. Semen is found on several parts of her body. So clearly that's evidence that is collected and kept, because DNA forensics had just kind of had some more advancements not long before this. So they were pretty confident that this was going to be the way that they would catch whoever did this. They realized the perpetrator took $8 from her wallet. How they know that, I don't know, because
I was just getting ready to ask, how in the world?
I mean, unless like Walter knew she had exactly $8 when she left South Carolina. I don't
Right,
know,
or
but
she like had an ATM receipt or something that said she took out $40, but only 32 were present.
yeah, I don't know. So anyway, but they took $8 from her wallet, a boombox, took her laundry basket because her clothes were dumped on the floor, and a stereo that she had just gotten as a gift. And so they're kind of thinking, well, he was taking these items, and so maybe he was like, well, let me put this in the laundry basket so it doesn't look weird that I'm carrying a stereo out of the apartment.
Right.
So that's kind of their thinking. They did not release that the laundry basket was taken to the media, because that was kind of their one thing that they were holding back as like proof if somebody mentioned a laundry basket or whatever, that they'd be able to prove this person knew something or had something to do it. I don't know why they chose laundry basket, but whatever. I guess it's
I would think it would be the $8.
Right. Either way, it's an odd
things, yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd thing to know. So anyway, they interview and talk to neighbors, checking to see if anyone saw anything, and also to tell them to lock their doors and windows. And as you will hear later on in my discussion with Carrie, that she's, kind of corroborating this, that she got spoken to by the police and whatnot.
Wow.
Yeah.
How scary for her. Oh my goodness.
Right. So they started to check out the surrounding area, and they find dozens of thongs on a bush nearby, along with a red duffel bag with a hotel logo on it. They find out that a hotel had given these bags away at some point, and they had like hundreds of them. And I think they were in a basement, and some of them got ruined in a flood or something. And so they were throwing half of them out, and some employees took them for friends and family. And so basically they're like, there's no way we can narrow down who has these hotel bags. So it doesn't.
And you mean thong underwear, right?
Yes. So just like dozens of thongs. Some of them were just like sitting on a bush, and then there was some on the ground. Like somebody had just kind of like tossed them up in the air and was like, I got to get rid of them. Whatever. I don't know.
Oh my, that's weird.
It is. Okay. It is very weird. So at any rate, there's really no way that they can kind of tie these bags to anybody, so it doesn't really help them. So, but they, through questioning of neighbors, that they find that a teenager who lived actually shared in the bedroom shared a bedroom wall with Stephanie's bedroom. So he lived in the apartment next to her, and his wall and her wall were their bedroom walls. He admitted to stealing the thongs from a laundry room and then dumped them because he was like, all right, I don't want to get rid of them. And so it was kind of suspicious, but he insisted that he had nothing to do with the murder. And they do end up clearing him because they're like, well, just because a weird teenager stole some thongs doesn't mean he went into Stephanie's apartment and murdered her.
You know what I think? When people do things like this is off track, but when people do silly things like that, like steal a bunch of thong underwear and then they grow up and they're adults, do you ever think they think about that and they're like, remember that one time when I stole a bunch of women's underwear and then threw them in a tree?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wonder if they do think about that. I would. I think about weird things that I did when I was little. I do.
Yeah, we do.
Anyway. Okay, so they don't really think the teenager has anything to do with it. The lead detective has his team go home at this point in the evening just to get some rest because they're like, this is going to be a doozy. We need some fresh eyes. We need to get rest and come back to this in the morning. But they leave a patrolman there to keep an eye out to make sure that the scene doesn't get disturbed. And so the chief was actually really pissed the next day when she found out that they left and went home and didn't really completely thoroughly do the scene because she felt like you must have missed something, whatever. He's like, but we needed to go home and get rest and we left people here. Nothing happened. But anyway, that was kind of a side note. So they come back the next day and they continue to question people, look for evidence, but they don't really get much. Nobody has any idea who would have done this except this peeping Tom that was, outside people's windows.
And all the other crimes that had happened in the area.
Right. But nobody had any idea who would have done this to her because she was just such a nice person. There was nobody that didn't like her. She was a sweet girl. There was zero people that had problems with her. So they were just at a loss. They had no idea. So with all of the interviews and descriptions of the peeping Tom, they release a sketch of what they think this peeping Tom looks like, hoping maybe it'll jog someone's memories. They kind of put it together from multiple people's, perspectives. And since there's so much semen at the scene, DNA is also their best bet. So clearly they run that through the system, but no matches come up, which means the perpetrator has probably not been arrested before or given his DNA sample for any reason. So there's a dead end that they run into again. So they also clear Walter. I'm sure you were probably wondering when I was going to get to Walter because they usually look at the boyfriend first. But they clear Walter.
I'm assuming he had an alibi in South Carolina, right?
Well, he was 270 miles away and he had talked to her on the phone, from his home. So, because I think people still kind of had some home phones then, maybe.
Right. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there was just no way that he could have gotten there and back again, committed that murder and then gotten back home in the time span that she had been found. So they cleared family members also by getting their DNA. There was a rapist from Alabama that apparently was in custody. And so they were comparing his DNA, but that wasn't a match. I mean, they were just going for it. What can we're grasping at straws here because we need to know something. We need to find something out. So they also get to the point of just asking people that live near the neighborhood or the apartments, will you submit DNA? Because, maybe we can eliminate as many people as we can. And then or maybe we'll happen to come across somebody. And also their thinking was too, is if they find someone who refuses to give their DNA, it's probably somebody you should look at as a suspect. So, yeah.
I don't love that logic, though.
I don't love that
logic.
Real. I don't either, but that's just what they said their belief is. And
right.
No. And there were 3 gentlemen that lived above Stephanie that had been refusing to give their DNA. And so they sent a pretty persuasive woman detective out there, apparently. She is really good at talking people into doing things. And I guess she just walked up to him and was like, just give me the damn sample. So they did.
Alrighty. So they did. Okay.
They did. And they were cleared. So they were just refusing. So along with your not agreeing with the detectives, they were refusing, but just to refuse. They didn't have anything to hide. They didn't do it.
Obviously not, yeah.
Right. So anyway, A DNA analyst from University of Virginia comes to offer his assistance with the testing. He had been working with DNA before the FBI even started working with it, so he was pretty knowledgeable. And all of the labs there were overwhelmed with samples. And so this guy kind of came to like push anything that came through on this case to the front of the line and rush them through. So they had that on their side. Police started to just sit near the apartment watching it. And on June 3rd, they see a man looking into a window. And then he moves onto another window and notices that he is masturbating. So they...
Okay.
Yes, gross. They immediately go and arrest him. His name was Christopher Lee Campen, and he had several charges of peeping and stalking and was even convicted of stalking in 1998. But again, his DNA clears him because it did not match. They attest the DNA against anyone and everyone that comes into their sightline that has done similar crimes within a range of the area, but each time the DNA clears everyone, and they're just getting blocked at every single turn. On June 20th, the cause of death is released. It was strangulation. She had a 13-inch ligature mark on her neck and marks on her wrists and ankles, a bruise above her right eye, and hemorrhaging in her eyes, which points to the strangulation, and marks on the back of her neck that indicate that a stick was used to like tighten whatever was used to strangle.
Oh,
her.
yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think that whatever was used to strangle her was left. Like, that wasn't left there, or the stick or anything. So this is just what they're getting based on looking at the body.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And here Carrie, our listener, is just living right there, and there's this crazy man on the loose, and they can't figure out who it is.
Yeah, and Carrie lives in the building across from hers. So she's
That's
not
so
like
scary.
far on the other end of the property, you know, like she's right there. Gosh, yes. I was like, I can't even imagine how you felt during this time.
Really scary.
Yeah. So after this break, we will get into the rest of the investigation. Okay, so in early 2003, just about a year after Stephanie's death, they decide to canvass the neighborhood again. They hand out flyers, they do traffic stops just to ask people questions.
That is a long time to go unsolved for this poor girl.
I know, and they're not, and they had DNA. They had the guy's semen, like ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And they're just not giving up. Like, I will say, the detectives in this case, unbelievable. The lead detective expected everyone that went out to the scene, basically, anytime that they went out there, to get at least 5 DNA samples. Or just don't bother coming back to the office. Like, you get those samples or you don't come back.
Oh, my God. So, can I ask a question off topic? Did someone live in the apartment after this?
I
would bet, right?
Not for a while, I don't think.
I don't know, because it's unsolved, and so they have to preserve the crime scene for a certain period of time, I would imagine. But then the crime, it gets released. So...
Right. And I know that I feel like there was one press conference on one of the anniversaries of her death that they went through the apartment and it was still empty. So I know they kept it empty for a long time, but I would imagine by now, I mean, it still exists. That
right. Oh, yeah. No, now. Right.
Yeah. But I don't know what point they released it.
Right. Okay. Got it.
So many times, some of the police that would go would come back with like 20 samples at a time. Like, they were just like swabbing everyone. They're like, open up. Like, let's do this. So soon they had DNA samples from 283 people. So imagine the backlog that they were causing at that point.
Oh, my word.
The lead detective also hears, I'm not naming any of their names, even though they're in this book. I don't know. Like, I mean, they're awesome people, but I just don't want to name any of there were so many different police officers mentioned. So that he hears of a company in Florida who claims to be able to match ethnicity to within 0.1% with the DNA sample. So this guy's like, that would be great if we can like knock out and just narrow it down to one ethnic group.
Right.
But I'm a little skeptical of this. So he basically puts the company to the test and he sends 4 samples of some of his coworkers, all different ethnicities, and they all come back spot on.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he's like, all right, let's do it. I'm sending it out. So he sends the DNA out, and they come back that it's a white guy, essentially. So great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So in June of 2003, they finally have a profile of this guy. White guy who works among us, late 20s to early 30s, with possible military experience. And they're saying this based on the bondage and being able to subdue her with no real defensive wounds. So that's why they're saying that.
Also, who works among us?
I know everyone.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a weird thing to say. He works among us.
Yeah.
Dun, dun.
Yeah, basically it's like, he's your average Joe. Like, you might not know.
Right.
You'll be able to see. Yeah, so... Anyway, it's not like 95% of the world. I don't know. Anyway, so they're slowly moving away from the peeping Tom angle because they're also thinking a military guy is not going to peep, like, whatever, maybe. I don't know. So in August of 2003, Stephanie's father offers a $100,000 reward in addition to the $10,000 that's being offered from the state of North Carolina for any leads that, lead to the capture of this person. Her mother, Molly, around this time writes a letter that's printed in the News and Observer pleading for leads. They get some, but basically it ends up going, none of the leads pan out. The lead detective in the case, again, has been planning to retire, but he keeps pushing it off. He basically was going to retire not long after Stephanie was murdered. But then he was like, he had told the dad, I'm going to figure this out. Like, we're going to solve this case and I'm going to work my butt off until I do. And so he stops, like, he pushes his retirement off.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
He's determined to be the one to figure it out.
Good man.
He is a good man. He was just so convinced that they could solve it. But in the end, 2 years after she is murdered and the case is still open, he's just basically like, I got to retire. Like, I don't now I know it's going to be solved, but maybe I'm not the person that's going to do it. And so he does end up retiring. So still good, still a great man. Maintained a relationship. And he picks 2 new detectives to take over in April of 2004. And apparently the department wasn't too keen on the 2 he picked. They were like, I don't think they're good enough or whatever. But there was something he saw in them that he was like, nope, they're the ones to do this. They've been involved. They know what's going on. So they start with kind of a fresh perspective. They just start kind of over again. They're like, all right, let's go back, start from the beginning. Because they believe that the peeping Tom should be back on the table. And so they go back through all of the files and start diving into the interviews with the people who had seen that guy. And they find that there was like 6 people that they talked to, and they went back and talked to those people, and those people end up turning them into like other people that they were like, no, but I think this person saw him and this person saw him. And so they end up getting more people that see this peeping Tom. So they start talking to those people. Side note, around this time, Stephanie's father files a lawsuit against the apartment complex because he was saying that, because basically most people do that in like a wrongful death suit. If they don't have a conviction of someone, they'll go for wrongful death, like in OJ.
Right.
So, but he's like, well, I don't have anybody to sue, so I'm going to sue the apartment complex. You didn't keep my daughter safe. You had like poor lighting there. You knew the peeping Tom was there. You didn't help. The windows were all like busted and couldn't be locked on that main level, which Carrie corroborates in her interview with me after.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so he's like, I'm going to sue you, wrongful death. So that's what's happening. The police also had been called to that apartment complex 1,000 times in the last 2.5 years.
Like literally 1,000 times?
Literally 1,000 times.
Oh my gosh, because you say it and you're like, it's like 1,000 times. But it's like legit.
Literally.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah.
What? And this is not a bad area.
Well, so I asked that, and Carrie was like, yeah, it was kind of like cheaper housing, and so it kind of like did. So I did ask that question because I wasn't aware. I didn't know anything about it. So. Okay, so going back to the fresh set of eyes with these new detectives, they go back and interview someone who had seen the peeping Tom again. This man informs them that the time he saw him, he was by Stephanie's window, and he left and started walking away. And so he was like, I'm going to follow this guy because I don't know what he's doing here and why he's by this window, but I'm going to follow him, see if he can get a closer look. But he said basically all he saw was this guy, because it was dark where he was like standing by the window. And when he came out in the light, he was wearing a hoodie, so he's like, there wasn't really anything. He could tell by like he was real skinny and like lanky and tall. And that's what everybody else had kind of been describing, but that's really all that he could tell. everyone was describing him like that. And with longish hair, if anybody saw his hair. Which, I'll add this, the composite that they initially had shorter hair because they were like combining different composites from different people. And so some people had said long hair, some people had said short hair. And now they're thinking that his hair was probably like pulled back inside the hoodie or the sweatshirt. And so that's why sometimes it seemed short. Because they were describing the same thing except for like the hair. And maybe sometimes he had glasses and didn't, but that's something that, you know, comes off. So anyway, let's see, let me get back. So they're realizing that he's possibly tucked his hair in hoodies. And he also, that same witness says he saw that guy a few days later walking a Rottweiler. And so that day he saw him walk with the dog through the woods that were behind the complex. You know how I said they were backed up, that building was backed up to the wooded area? He started walking through the woods. And if you walk through those woods, there's another apartment complex on the other side of that wooded area. So they're like, okay, so maybe we should go check out that complex and see what's going on over there. That was called Dominion Apartments. Investigators go over there. They wanted to interview the people who work there, like in the management office. They spend some time just chit-chatting, saying what they're investigating, whatever. And then at one point, they're just like, all right, so who's this guy with a Rottweiler? And they said that the silence that they encountered immediately upon saying that was like eerie. Like everyone in the office just got real quiet. And then one person like piped up and was like, so that's Drew Planton, and he's somewhat of a strange bird. Just kind of like keeps to himself, looks a little awkward, always looks real thin and frail and got long hair, like scraggly hair, and like kind of looks like a hippie, but doesn't make eye contact with anybody and just walks around with his dog all the time. They just kind of felt like he was a little weird.
Okay.
So, but he doesn't live there anymore. He had moved out, I think, about a year or so after.
Oh, but they remembered him.
Yes.
They were like, we know exactly who you're talking about.
And his name, like that, like Drew Planton. So clearly he wanted to be unnoticeable, but he was noticeable.
Okay.
So they go on to ask, well, are there any other like nosy neighbors around here? You know, like, you got any Karens around here that know everything that's going around, like watching everything all the time? So they send detectives to this older woman who lives there. Because clearly older ladies like to just kind of sit around and watch what's going on. She comes. She
probably going to be me when I'm older, by the way.
Well, definitely. I mean, people already call me Karen, so definitely gonna be. So, anyway, so she welcomes him into the house, and they start talking about how they're still investigating the Stephanie Bennett murder. And her response to them is, "You haven't arrested anyone in that yet? Everyone knows it was the guy with the big dog." Like, what? So they're like, excuse me? Like, how long have you all over here?
Them that.
Right. Well, but they didn't go over there to talk to them. And they weren't, I guess they weren't contacting to the police because some of the sketch wasn't very good or what, you know, I don't know. But anyway, he's like, so y'all have probably been talking about this for 3 years and we're now just finding this out. So they subpoena the tenant records and find Drew Planton's name, and on his paperwork, he lists a Rottweiler as his dog. They start digging into Drew and find out his new address, which is across town, and so they go over there to try and talk to them, but every time they go, no one answers. Doesn't matter what time of day, early in the morning, late at night, like nobody answers. So they're like, he's either ignoring us or he's just never home.
He's ignoring you.
Yes. He's definitely ignoring you. That's what they thought. So on the 3rd anniversary of Stephanie's murder, they asked the media to throw away that composite that they have had because clearly this is probably tainting people's memories. They're saying that what we have or what we saw or what we think we saw isn't relevant because I don't think it has anything to do with it because this is not the right composite drawing. And so they wanted people to come forward and be like, let the detectives decide if this was a small piece of information or irrelevant. Like, tell us anything from that time. So people start coming forward. The woman who lived above Drew didn't know his name, but saw him a lot and just said he was strange. That's everybody's immediate reaction about him is he's strange.
Okay.
She said she saw him walking with a young boy one day and overheard them talking like in a breezeway. And the young boy was like, I told him I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't do it, blah, blah, blah. And then like Drew said something like, stop saying everything. Like, don't say anything more right now. And they think that they come to realize that this is the teenage boy that had the thongs. It's the same kid.
Oh.
I don't know why, but that's what they got. And I think maybe they even did follow up on it. And he was kind of like, yeah, I know him, but I don't, I didn't have anything to do with anything. I didn't do a crime with him or whatever. Because they started thinking like maybe he had something to do with it then. But they kind of go away from that pretty quickly. So,
that's a weird lead.
It is a weird lead. Another woman who was walking around the lake one day said she was just walking and she just kind of felt like strange. And so she turned around and Drew was literally right there in her face. And she had like no idea where he came from. Like he just like snuck up like a ninja on her and was like, hey, and she was like,
weird.
Yeah, it was kind of freaky. Again, this is why people call him strange. Another woman who lived upstairs from Drew said that she had seen Drew. She has a dog. And so she had, kind of saw him walking around and she would be walking around. But one day saw him at a picnic table that was kind of like near her building. And she was sitting outside having coffee. And he was just staring at her like nonstop. And it was so eerie that she was like, I got to go inside. I can't just sit out here with this guy staring at me. So she went inside and was like looking out her blinds, like watching. And he didn't stop staring at her place.
Oh,
so she
my.
Yeah, closing her blinds and...
Well, good for her for listening to her...
Right. Yeah.
Like little freak alert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now they're like, all right, we really want to talk to this guy because clearly we're getting creep vibes from him from a bunch of people. So we need to find out where he works. So they do. He works for a state-run fertilizer lab and he is a chemist.
Oh, smart guy. Yeah. Okay.
So he's a very smart guy. They show up there to speak to him and he's kind of like put off by this, like... What are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. And he says from the beginning that he has not heard of this case, which they're like, bull. Like, there's no way that you lived in the apartment complex right behind it and heard nothing about this case. And so they're like talking about it. And at some point he's like, okay, fine. So maybe I may have heard of it or whatever. Like they jogged his memory on it or something. Mm-hmm. So then they're like, well, will you come down to the police station? We just have a couple questions. And he's like, nope, I won't do that. But if you want to talk to me, you can make an appointment with me and meet me at my apartment sometime.
Like have your people call my people?
Yeah, make an appointment.
Okay, Drew. Yeah. Also, you don't live at your apartment because we've been there a bunch of times.
Right, exactly. So they do. They make an appointment to come. I don't know what day this was, but they're like, this Thursday, we're coming.
These poor police, they were like gritting their teeth, like, you gotta be freaking kidding me, kid.
Punch him in the face.
Yes.
So they go a few days later on Thursday to meet Drew at his apartment. And when they arrive, Drew is ready. His hair is combed. He's dressed good. He invites them in. His apartment is clean. Looks, doesn't look like the normal bachelor pad. But he doesn't really invite them all the way in. Like, basically, he has these 3 chairs, 2 chairs at a table, and then, like, a lawn chair across. And it was like, this is where we'll sit. Like, you can go right here, and that is it. Like, you can't go anywhere else.
That's a staging area?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he answers whatever questions. They proceed to ask simple ones, like, do you wear glasses? And he says no. But, of course, they have his driver's license, and on that it says corrective lenses. So, legally, he has to wear corrective lenses while he's driving.
Okay.
So they're like, are you lying to me about glasses now? So also, he says that he doesn't walk his dog near that complex or the lake, which they also know is a lie because they have so many people that have seen him at the other complex around the lake.
He's been ID'd a billion times.
Yeah. So come on, Drew. Like, please. So just little things that he's lying about, but they're like, this is a little off. So they ask him for a DNA sample, and he's a little hesitant. He's like, my mom's a lawyer in Michigan, and which is where he's from New Jersey. Abusive father situation. Mom he has 3 brothers, takes all the kids to Michigan, starts her life over, becomes a lawyer. They live in Michigan.
Okay.
So that's the quick Cliff Notes version of his life. So she's a lawyer in Michigan, and I know what you guys do with DNA samples. You like hold on to it. You start comparing it to a bunch of other things. Like, I don't want that out there. No, I'm not going to give it to you. So like, well, but it'll be our easiest way to like, kick you to the curb as a suspect. Well, they didn't say suspect at that time, but be the easiest way to like not connect you to this and whatever.
Yeah, roll you out.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Help us help you.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, okay, fine. Talk to your mom. Think this over. Get back to us by Friday at 5 p.m. They like give them
make an appointment. We're going to make an appointment with you now, Drew. Okay.
Exactly. So they're like waiting with bated breath near the like computer. And at 5 p.m. on the dot on Friday, he's like, I will decline that. Thank you. Bye. Like, basically that's it. So he's like, nope, not going to do it. Not surprising though. So now they just start to really watch this guy. Super suspicious. And they're convinced that if they can just get a DNA sample from him, they will be able to match it with the killer's DNA that they have on file. So they just sit in cars like outside his apartment watching him.
And he knows they're doing that?
Well, I'm sure that he can see him. He's
Okay.
a smart dude. So I'm sure that he figures it out. But they're trying to be inconspicuous. But I'm sure that he figures it out at some point based on the rest of this story.
You would think they would just be out in the open and be like, look, if you're not going to give us this DNA sample that we need to rule you out, we're going to stalk you. Or,
Right.
well, not stalk,
Yeah.
but like we're not going to leave you alone.
Yeah, exactly. You think. But just wait. Oh, just wait.
Oh, no, there's more? Okay.
So they find that he does some kind of odd things. At lunch, they also sit like and watch him at work too, like when he goes out to lunch and stuff like that. So he'll sit in his car at lunch and not eat. He just sits and stares straight ahead. And it's like over 90 degrees at this point, and it's like August or like summer in North Carolina. You know what it's like there.
Hot as
Yeah,
balls.
over 90 degrees. And he's got a clunker of a car, and so his AC doesn't work. So he's sitting there with all his windows up, just sitting in his car, not eating, not doing anything, just staring straight ahead. And that's all he does his entire lunch period. His
Is he
car,
listening to music or something?
Well,
Or
I
a
mean, I don't
podcast
know.
in there?
maybe. Is he listening to us right now?
Yeah.
No, he's not. So,
Well, good.
he keeps an oil pan under his car while he's at work as well. And then when he comes out of work to leave, he takes the oil pan out and pours the oil back in his car because that's like how big of a clunker it is. Like he needs it to get home probably.
Oh, bless. Oh,
I
my
know.
gosh. I've had a car like that. That's tough.
Yeah. That's amazing to me though. So
Resourceful.
yeah. One day the cops are like, oh my gosh, he's got a water bottle in his hand. This is it. Like he comes out of the car, he throws that water bottle away. We're going to get it. Like this is it. So he goes back to work and he throws it away. You know the word I have written here? Eureka! We have a sample.
Why?
You know why? That word came to me as I was typing. Eureka!
Eureka?
I don't know. Anyway. Oh, joy. We have a sample.
Oh, joy. They're getting better.
So the police go get this water bottle and send it in for testing. And guess what? It
Eureka!
comes back. Eureka.
Oh, joy.
It comes back with nothing.
Wait, what?
Nothing. Exactly. I can't remember specifically, and I tried to go back and look real quick before I was typing this up, but I think it actually came back as like a female DNA sample.
They got the
which
wrong
was weird.
bottle.
Well, that's what was thought. Like, you got the wrong bottle. Either you got the wrong bottle or you got the wrong guy. Like, this is just like not him. It's because I can't remember if it was specifically like a female or if it just didn't come back as a match. And so all the police, like all the other police officers in the building were like, you have the wrong guy. It's not a match. Like, move on. Like, let's stop. So that's why I think maybe it wasn't female. It just didn't come back as a match.
Okay.
For some reason that stuck out in my head. I don't remember why. So anyway, so they get some flack from everybody, should move on, but they are still convinced, no, this is our guy. We're going to get him. And I think he actually purposefully threw away somebody else's bottle because he knew they were onto him. This is how they're thinking that he's thinking.
Okay.
He knows that they're onto him. I'm going to throw this away to throw you off my trail. So it's not going to be a match and you're going to think it's mine and I'm done. So, because he is a chemist. He knows what they need to catch him. He knows
Yeah.
what they need. They're going to go, what lengths they're going to go to.
I am on the
So-
edge of my seat right now.
Oh, you will get even further onto the edge of your seat.
Okay.
So sorry. They also realized that nobody ever saw him take a drink of it before he threw it away. They're like, oh, we saw him have it in his hand, but did we actually see him take a drink? So that's why they are also thinking, he totally was planting that.
Baiting them.
Yeah. So they start thinking, well, what other ways can we do to get DNA samples? Swab the outside of his car when he isn't around, go through his trash, because once you throw something away, you it's not a violation of privacy anymore. You
Right.
like lose all rights
Public
to it,
property.
essentially.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but they want to obtain it in the right way because if it's a match, they don't want it to be thrown out in court. They don't want there to be any issues with getting this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to get their guy.
Yeah. So they ask around about where he throws his trash out on the grounds. and not one person has ever seen him walk out of his apartment to throw trash out. Ever. So
Okay.
he's either doing it like in the middle of the night when literally no one's around, or he's like doing it at like random places, like taking it in his car and like throwing it in a random dumpster or something, like, because he has never seen throwing trash out.
Okay. Or he's a hoarder.
Or he kind of is a little bit of a hoarder, I think, in the end, but I don't know that it was trash. I think it was more that he was putting it elsewhere so that nobody would ever find it. But, so, anyway, things are getting interesting in the story, I know. But if you don't already find it interesting, you'll now start to find it even more interesting. They get permission to enlist the help of a coworker of his. He works at a state facility, so technically he has no level of privacy expected there because it's a state facility and it can be inspected anytime they want to and anything can be examined there. So, apparently. They befriend his supervisor, who doesn't know him very well because he's pretty much a recluse. Nobody knows him that well. He's a quiet guy, just goes about his job day after day without much interaction with anybody. So she's like, I don't even think this guy can do something like that. Like, you have the wrong guy. So she's like, I'm going to help you, but I'm going to help you because I'm going to help him prove his innocence.
Okay.
But she still doesn't want him to know. Because, what if there's that slight chance that he did do it? She's like, I don't
he's a
want
murderer.
I'm doing this. So, okay. So they asked her to get anything that she can. A utensil, a soda bottle, a can, hair from his workstation, anything that she can think of that she can get from his workstation.
Wow, I can't imagine being asked to do this.
I know. Well, she was all in. I mean, like, if you read this book, like, you'd see, like, her interactions with the cops and, like, how she was thinking because she was interviewed for the book and everything. She's a rock star. She's my favorite person.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I think I would be her.
Yeah. I was going
What do you need me
to
to?
If somebody, if the cops were like, do you want to be help us in an investigation? I would be like, all day, guys, all day.
Bring it on. Yeah. Okay. So she starts watching him and realizing that he does have some kind of odd behaviors. He hardly ever eats at work and he never throws anything away. He just puts things in his pockets and goes to the bathroom.
Weird.
Yeah. She tried to get his hair, but there's never anything around his workstation. It's always immaculate. Once she saw him comb his hair and she was like, this is it. He's combing his hair. I'm going to get, like, something's going to drop. So she goes, before she has a chance to go, he ends up going and picking up all of the hair that fell down on the floor and around his workstation and puts it in his pocket.
I was just getting ready to say, did he keep it? Oh, wow. He knows they are hunting him.
Oh, yeah. Such a weirdo. She gave him a soda one day and he drank it, but kept the bottle or the can, whatever it was, put it in his bag before he left for work and just took it with him. So, yeah. At some point, they find out that he has a brother named Donald. He has 3 brothers, as I mentioned earlier, but Donald has been arrested and convicted for being a peeping Tom, and he lived in Asheville.
Okay.
So they were like, let's go pay Donald a visit. Tell him we won't say who we are. We're just going to go. He works in a bar. We're
And
gonna go
that's
hang out.
ironic, too, that his brother is a peeping Tom.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Tell me about it. So they go and they get, like, bottles or whatever cups that he was drinking out, just so they can have his DNA to kind of compare at things, because they can rule him out because they're thinking, well, what if he was visiting at some point and he's really the one that did it? Or there's the familial connection, right. Like, okay, it's a matching DNA, but it's not an exact match, so it's somebody in this family, whatever. But they do bring samples back, but they kind of decide we're not going to test these until we have Drew's too, so they can compare the two specifically. I don't know why, honestly, but that's what they decide. So the coworker at this time is also continuing to keep an eye on Drew and try and get samples. She's like, tells the cops, all right, I'm going to have an ice cream social, because who can resist ice cream? No one can resist ice cream. So I'm going to get the popsicle stick that he eats his ice cream off of, and I'm going to, like, bring it to you. So she does. Drew has some ice cream. She actually made sure she ate the same color ice cream with the same color stick as Drew had. Like, he had a red one. So she was like, I need to eat something with a red one, because if she gets the stick, she can switch it out. Because clearly,
switcheroo.
Clearly, she knows he's, like, keeping track of everything. She's like, I got to switch it. I can't just take it. Smart lady.
Oh, man. Okay.
So after Drew eats it, he puts it in a napkin and puts it right in his pocket. I think he may have eaten 2, actually. And later that day, everyone was going, like, kind of to another part of the building for this person's retirement party. So she's like, I'm going to go back to his workstation when everybody goes to this retirement party, I'm going to look in his drawers and see if I can find the popsicle stick. And so that's what she does and sees the popsicle sticks. And she's like, here's my chance. But she's so nervous that she kind of hesitates, thinking like, what if he comes back? And that's exactly what happens. He literally comes walking through the door and she has to like quickly shut the drawer and like make like she's doing something else or whatever. And he comes like basically walks by her, opens the drawer and takes the napkin out and like puts it in his pocket. Like
She's been had.
kind of, I think. But anyway, so close. So anyways, he packs up and goes. They just cannot believe the lengths that this man is going to prevent them from getting his DNA. Like, it's insane.
That is guilt in itself. It's
Yes.
him, right? Come on. What's happening?
I know.
Dying.
This is a long one. Look how long we're going. Okay. The coworker decides to have a luncheon at the end of the summer. She's like, okay, I'm going to plan this. We're going to go to Golden Corral. You guys come. Somebody's going to be like, what, you know, like there's going to be undercover police that he's never seen at another table, just kind of keeping an eye on things. And she's just so they can see like, what can we grab of his off the table? So they do that. They see if he uses any utensils, drinks from any cups, and then they'll swoop in and get it. During the luncheon, he eats mainly finger foods. If he uses a napkin, he goes right in his pocket. And if he uses a straw for his drink, before he leaves the table to go to the bathroom or anything, he takes the straw out and takes it with him.
He has got to be exhausted.
Right?
Like,
Yeah. And it turns out he's actually going to the bathroom to flush all of the napkins down the toilet. That's how he was getting rid of the napkins.
wow.
Yeah. And the straws. He was doing that too.
It was not environmentally friendly, Drew.
No.
A chemist would know that.
Right, exactly. At the end of the meal, there's banana pudding. And he just could not resist the banana pudding. So he takes a fork and he picks it up and starts eating with a fork. Takes a couple spoonfuls and then spends 5 minutes wiping it off with like a wet napkin.
The fork?
The fork. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's like, you didn't get my DNA. He's wiping it off. So everyone leaves. The officers swoop in, get the fork, but they're kind of like, I mean, this is our only shot, but I don't really know that we're going to find anything on it because he's wiping it off. So they turn it in, and there was a little bit of DNA left on it. And it does match several strands to the killer's DNA, but not enough to conclusively say it's him. Edge of your seat.
I can barely breathe.
They need more. So they get permission from the district attorney to go into the lab and gather what they can from his workspace. She's like, yeah, go ahead and do it because he doesn't have any level of privacy there anyway, so just go do it. So they set it up one day to enter after he leaves from work. And he kind of lingers that day as if he knew what was happening, but eventually he does get out of the building and they go right in. And they're like, there'll likely be DNA inside of his workplace, like inside the gloves. He has a pair of gloves that are assigned to him that he has to use during certain kinds of testing. And so they're only his. He's the only one that uses them. So they're like, if you can get those gloves, that's great. Swab is like keyboard, whatever. So they find the gloves, but they're kind of like, do we take them? Because if we take them, he's going to know we took them. And then he's going to know we're onto him. And then he's going to flee or he's going to kill himself.
He already knows. He wiped a fork down for 5 minutes. He already knows.
But if he knows they actually got something, because right now he doesn't think they got anything on him. But he knows they're afraid he's going to like leave or kill himself or something like that. So they're like, we've got to switch these out, but there's specific things on this glove that he's going to notice they're not his. And anyways, it was kind of crazy. But in the end, they decide, let's take it. Let's take a chance. Hopefully these other gloves pass off as his for a short amount of time just to give us enough time to get this DNA back. So they do that. Excuse me. They send it in. They get the testing back on October 18th, 2005. And it's a match. 100% match to Drew
Eureka!
Eureka. So on October 19th, they called that same supervisor that had been working with him and was like, is he still at work? And she's like, was it a match? And they're like, it's a match. And she's like, oh my gosh, like totally in shock. They're like, just tell us when he leaves. So anyways, as he's leaving work, they literally immediately, they told her the whole building's surrounded. We don't want to go inside because we don't know what he'll do. We don't want anybody else to be in danger. So when he's leaving, we'll take him. So they immediately are on top of him as soon as he walks out the door and take him down. And he had a fully loaded gun in his pocket.
Whoa.
So they were thinking he knew it was getting close, and when it got to that point, they're thinking he was going to try and do like suicide by cop, like pull the gun and make them shoot him. That's what their theory is. But they did.
Thank goodness he didn't.
Right. And they said, had we not been on top of him, like had we like had to come in from the side, like he would have had, he did not have a chance to pull that gun out of his pocket, thankfully. So he's in an interrogation room for about 6 hours and refuses to talk the entire time, almost like he's in a catatonic state. He just stood there staring, like wouldn't say anything, wouldn't acknowledge anybody, nothing. 15 hours later, he's arraigned, because apparently in North Carolina, you have to be arraigned within 24 hours.
Okay.
Which I didn't know that. But anyway, so he's arraigned, and he has to be wheeled into the courtroom in a wheelchair, and he's basically like strapped to it because he refused to eat or drink anything for however long, like the 15 hours that he was there. And he was like frail as it is. And so, and I think they think he was acting, but like he couldn't even hold his head up. So they even had to like prop his head up and stuff. He's totally acting, because he wasn't like that until he stepped foot in the police department. So anyway, but he had to be wheeled in a wheelchair. When they search his home, they find Stephanie's laundry basket, newspaper clippings of her murder, 9 handguns, 2 shotguns, 40 knives, a sword, a machete, a lockpick set, duct tape, and handcuffs, which is basically kidnappers'
yes,
briefcase there. Underwear, tampons, including used tampons.
Oh,
gross. Names of other women, of which they look into every single one of them, because they're like, if any of these guys are missing or dead, like we know that he had something to do with it. So they're looking into everybody. I think everybody was pretty much okay, except, hold on, I shouldn't say that. Most of them were okay. One turns out to be that woman upstairs who was freaked out by him.
okay.
They believe the tampons were hers because it was kind of like in this, like, think general area with other stuff. He had a video cassette of hers, like that was like of her and friends, maybe high school stuff, I don't know, whatever, and like pictures from a picture book. So he had gone into her apartment, taken this video cassette and recorded it and then put it back, because she's like, I still have that video cassette. I just looked at it the other day. And they're like, well, then he made a copy of it and then put it back.
That is so creepy.
So their thought is that she was actually like one of his intended victims, but because she lived on the second floor and had a dog, like there was deterrence there. It wasn't easy to get to her. And so she's kind of in this book is like, oh my gosh, that should have been me. Like, I don't know why it wasn't, but it wasn't. I'm so glad, but terrible. Anyway, so yeah. So they also find a Social Security refund check from 1998 for a woman named Rebecca in Lansing, Michigan. Remember, his mom is in Lansing. And that's actually, like I said, mentioned where he grew up most of his life. And they find out that this woman was shot in the head with an odd caliber gun in 1999. And it had been an unsolved case since then. Well, wouldn't you know, one of those guns was the gun that they found in his house that was used to kill Rebecca. And it was kind of like 2 different murders, whatever. And so they're trying to figure it out. But either way, the gun in his place killed her. So Michigan's now like, whoa, we have our killer. So he's sitting in jail as they all gather everything they need to try him. And he's just being watched and kept pretty isolated because they're like, he's suicide watch, yada, yada, yada. They bring the case before a grand jury in November of 2005. And 2 weeks later, North Carolina declares it a capital murder case, intending to go for the death penalty.
Okay.
And they're continuing to build a case, and so is Michigan. They're kind of working together, except they're kind of also fighting over who gets to try him.
Right.
And North Carolina really wants to, because they're like, 1, we have death penalty.
They did all the work.
2, we did all this work. Like,
yeah.
We want them. But Drew is going to screw everyone.
What?
Because he's found on January 1st, 2006, hanging in his cell from bed sheets with a plastic bag over his head, and is declared dead at 2:37 p.m. that day. And so we've got justice, but not justice. Like, family doesn't have to go through a trial, death penalty, he's dead. I don't know. What is this story?
I am exhausted. Okay. I am quite literally drained of all of my energy. That was a ride.
Amazing ride.
Carrie.
In bad ways.
Thank you for that suggestion. I can't, this was coming back with a bang. After Serial Killer September, now we got Drew. My gosh, this poor Stephanie, poor Rebecca, these families, they went so long, they fought so hard, they got their guy, and then, I'm tired.
They're constantly looking too into like other things that he could be connected to because they're not convinced that those were the only two that he committed and whatnot.
These are the types of crimes too, that these cases that really freak me out because they really go to show that they work among us. That's what they said, right? That's really what it goes to show is like, you just don't ever know. And you have to listen to your gut. If there's something creepy going on or a creepy dude or a creepy person, like get a dog, you know, I mean, there's like, you gotta, your head has to be on a swivel all the time. That is bananas.
So true. I know. Yes. And so stay tuned too at the end of this for Carrie's interview if you want to hear what she has to say. So
I can't wait to hear it. I haven't listened yet because I didn't want to know the case. I tell you what, I'm going to have to take a nap. That's what I'm going to have to do. That was a great case. Well done. Holy smokes. What a comeback.
Yeah.
Daggone. This was a long one today. You guys, if you stuck with us, thanks for sticking with us. I know you did because I know you were on the edge of your seat like I am. I'm going to think about this for a long time.
Yes, I know.
Holy majoli.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. And it was really nice to quote unquote meet a listener because we did a whole video chat and whatnot.
Oh,
so
that's
that was
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. I can't wait to hear it. All right, guys, thank you so much. Let us know what you think. Come find us on social media. Reach out to us. Keep sending the suggestions. Maybe our favorite. What a ballpark suggestion this was. Like, it is a home run. Whew. Okay, so we hope you join us next week for another one, and we hope that we can keep you guys on this ride with us because we're having a great time. Like I said, come find us, reach out. Tell your friends. That's our favorite thing. It's our best compliment, so please do that. And always remember, the world is scary. People suck. Hide in your closet.
So, well, I guess my first question is, did you know Stephanie at all personally?
No, I didn't. But my building was like there was a pool separating my building from her building. So it was on like either side. But we both lived on the like very bottom floor. Okay. And so like as soon as that happened, I was freaked out as well because I was on the bottom floor too.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that was going to be my next question. How far you were living or how close you were living to her. And so had you had any like experiences with this peeping Tom or anything yourself?
Actually looking back, I think I did because there was this path in the middle of our complex where you could just, it was tree lined, but it was still a sidewalk, so it was very dark. There was no lights on at all except for the buildings on either side. And I had 2 dogs, so I would walk them, at night before I went to bed or whatever. And I remember seeing like this really big, like scary dog. Like it looked like a Rottweiler, like they say in the book or whatever. And the guy walking him would always have a hoodie on. So, I mean, I never, because it was just kind of like one of those things where it's like, that's scary, Yeah. And I had these 2 tiny little Boston Terriers who, thought they were big dogs, but they're not. Right. So, I would try to keep them away from the big dog. But I do remember seeing that a few times. And the path that it actually led to another wooded area. And you could walk through the woods to get to the next apartment complex. It was called Dominion on Lake Lynn.
Okay.
And so, all these complexes were connected.
Because that's not the one that he lived in, right?
It is, yeah.
Oh, it is the one. Okay.
He lived in Dominion. We lived in Bridgeport.
Okay.
So, and they all were on Lake Lynn. So you could you could get to Lake Lynn from all these different complexes.
Right.
So you
okay.
could walk Lake Lynn and come up into our complex, or you could walk Lake Lynn and go into like all the other different complexes.
Right.
You didn't have to get there from the main roads.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and my guess is he was probably just walking. She may have been outside. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But it's
Noticed
just-
her and
Yeah.
pinpointed. Were you living alone at the time? Were you?
It's funny. I was at the time. I was married, but my husband had relocated to Madison during the time that this happened because he took a job. But I'm a teacher, so I needed to finish out the school year.
Right.
So I finished out the school year, and I also taught summer school. So I was actually waiting until like August to move with him, and plus that was like when our lease ended anyway. So, but yeah, I was by myself.
Okay.
It was super scary.
Like, I was just gonna say, what were
Yeah.
your feelings like immediately after this happened?
I slept on the couch every night because my bedroom window backed up into like trees. Like you couldn't see anything. Like you couldn't even see the parking lot from my bedroom window. It was just like trees in this corner of the building. And if you read the book or watch like Investigative Discovery or something, the windows didn't latch properly. None of them did. So all the maintenance workers, because he got in through a broken window or a malfunctioning window. So maintenance workers came and drilled screws into all our windows that everybody that lived on the first floor. So I was like, I mean, this very could have easily been me, you know?
Right. Yeah. Gosh, that is scary.
Yeah. So I wasn't able to open the windows after they like put the screws in there. Not that I wanted to, but yeah, it was freaky. But yeah, I did. I slept on the couch for probably 3 weeks. And then
Okay. And so aside from sleeping on the couch, were there any other routines that you changed?
oh gosh, yeah, I like ran into my house. I kept all the windows closed, drapes pulled. Let's see, I literally didn't go out at night. I did have a friend that lived upstairs in the next building over, a guy. And so like if I needed to go out at night or whatever, I'd call him and be like, hey, can you come down? And he'd like walk with me places if I needed to go out. But yeah, I was living in fear. It was very, very anxiety invoking.
Yeah.
It was hard.
I can't even imagine that. And did you did you speak to any investigators, or did they talk to you or whatever?
Yep, they came and knocked on everybody's door. They would just ask, like, basic questions about. Hang on, what?
I'm gonna clean the dishes that are in the sink after I finish lunch.
Okay, thank you. They asked basic questions about, like, did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Did you notice anything? And, like, at the time, I wasn't really. They kept everything under wraps. I was like, I don't know what you're trying to allude to, but, everything's been normal. And I was over at my friend's apartment. He lived, like, towards the lake. He lived in an apartment on the lake. And we were just hanging out down there, me and some other friends. And the main detective came down and talked to him. And because he lived so close to the lake, they thought that maybe they used that path to get to the lake as like an escape route. So yeah, they were looking at every possible angle, I guess. And they did. They came around quite a few times.
And you knew what had happened immediately.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there was, tape and it was on the news and all that.
Right.
So
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
It was creepy.
So, yeah, I can't even imagine. I think that was all I had. Now, you have read the book, and it's pretty accurate description of it. Yeah.
And there's a lot that, they kept out of the public eye, especially like, I don't know if you've gotten to the part where he was also stalking like his neighbor upstairs. Did you get to that
Yes.
part yet?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had like snuck into her apartment and stolen things. And
Right.
it's just like all this stuff that he kept as like trophies. It was so creepy. So I don't know who was next on his list. It could have been any of us. I guess he did have a list of people that might have been the next victim.
Right. Yeah. Gosh.
So it was so, something happening that close to home. You know, it was 20 years ago, but still, I mean, now I'm very like hypersensitive to crime. And that's why I guess I'm so into like true crime.
Right.
Just because it happens so much.
Yeah.
Right
And
around the corner.
it's almost better to kind of not that you do totally, but try and understand what is going through their mind so that you can kind of keep
Seriously.
yourself safe in a way.
And I don't trust, like, I always wonder if, not everybody, but, you know, creepiness, like if somebody has a weird vibe to them, I'm like, I wonder, you know, just, I'm on alert.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like with that with my children, I'm like, y'all, you need to be very, you know, hyper aware of what's going on around you, because some people may not be who they seem.
Right. So clearly it took them a while to get him. I mean, and so you probably were not living there anymore. Had you?
No,
Yeah.
Like I said, my husband moved back to Madison for a year, and so we were there for a year, and then we moved back. But we didn't live in that apartment complex again.
Yeah. And oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. So I also feel like I think I have a friend. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, maybe she's moved that lives on Lynn Lake now. It's not, or Lakeland. Which one is it?
Lakeland.
Lynn Lake.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, is it still that? I guess is it still a rough area? Because it seemed like the way the book was started, it was like, this is a terrible spot. Like there's constantly break-ins with cars. And we've got this creeping Tom. You know, like, so is it still kind of a rough?
The apartments were not they were older, so they were cheaper. So I guess that's why you would think, you know, people right out of college, you know, can afford those apartments. You know, just they were cheap. They weren't like anything spectacular. But they backed up right to Leesville Road. I don't know. Are you familiar with Leesville? So Leesville, I mean, that's a nice part of North Raleigh. So if you keep going down Leesville, like there's nice houses and things like that. But I think since they're so old, they were probably 20 years old when we lived there. They're probably like 40 years old now. So yeah, they're still pretty rough. And you know, it's not the best part of. I mean, it's not ghetto or anything, but yeah, they were affordable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. I remembered what I was going to ask before. So because you had moved and whatnot, I know you said you moved back to the area but not there. Did you follow the case and constantly try and find more? I mean, I'm sure it was, you know, in the news all the time anyways if something came up. Right. Especially once I got him. But so you were following it and trying to.
Yeah. Because it was unsolved for however many years, you know? Yeah. And then just like once they arrested him, it was like, oh my gosh, you know, this dude looks like a serial killer.
Yeah. So yeah. See, I haven't even looked at pictures yet.
Oh, girl.
And I read that he committed suicide.
Yes.
Just like 2 years ago.
While he was waiting trial.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is such a coward way.
I know, exactly.
Anyway.
So, I know, I would have wanted to see him, like, his reasoning or just, like, see him brought to justice, but he wasn't having any of that.
All right. Thanks so
Good
much.
to see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.